Welcome back to the Lars Larson Show. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I'm glad to get your phone calls and your emails at 866-HEY-LARS. That's 866-439-5277. Our Twitter poll tonight: should illegal aliens get American taxpayer-funded welfare? I would say no to that, but apparently Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Pocahontas Elizabeth Warren say they would like illegal aliens to get all the welfare and social programs that America offers. I think that's absolutely insane. But along with all the other giveaways that they have proposed, and especially Senator Warren, who's proposing them because I think she thinks she can give away things and become Santa Claus as a way of winning the Democrat nomination and perhaps even the presidency. Now, in yesterday's Twitter poll, I asked you this: should cable news ban President Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, from their shows, as Joe Biden is asking? I said no, and so did 97% of you. Only 3% of you said yes. Now, I know that sometimes I hear from people that, well, these polls are biased because they're going to get answered a certain way. Well, Joe Biden apparently thinks it's legitimate for him to request that American cable news networks simply ban somebody from the airwaves because Joe Biden doesn't like the message. Never made any sense to me that you could do that. To that point, let's talk to Frank Gaffney, who's founder and president of the Center for Security Policy. Frank, welcome back to the program. So the Democrats are proposing to have an impeachment vote before Thanksgiving, and I want to know whether or not you think that this is both an effort to take down Donald Trump and an effort to take down Joe Biden at the same time.
It may or may not have that design to it, Lars. I think that's going to have the practical effect. It certainly is the case that you can't get people all whipped into a frenzy talking about the problems associated with dealings with Ukraine in a manner that seems to be, shall we say, self-interested.
Yep.
And not really light up Joe Biden in the same process. And frankly, the problems that I think most of us have with Joe's conduct in Ukraine, from a self-interested point of view, self-serving, self-dealing, however you want to describe it, vastly exceed what Donald Trump is being accused of. So it's a real problem for Joe.
No, I'd agree with you. And in fact, I keep asking, I get a certain number of naysayers who say, well, we really should go after the president. He did something evil by asking the new president of Ukraine to look into this. And I said, well, I want to know about Joe Biden. I mean, if you think that the president of the United States should not ask whether other countries are pursuing people who may have engaged in criminal activities that affect the United States, I think you're asking the president not to do his job. But can we also look at Joe Biden? And I guess what I worry about, Frank, is we already have the example of the Mueller investigation, which managed somehow to look at every jot and tittle of whether or not Donald Trump had links to the Russians, while simultaneously ignoring the real documented link of Hillary Clinton to Fusion GPS to Perkins Coie to the British former secret agent, to the Russian government that supplied the information that went into the Steele dossier that resulted in FISA warrants and investigations and really the underlying basis of the whole Mueller investigation. You say, well, how could you look at Trump? I mean, in fact, I wondered 50 years from now when people look back in history and say, how could they look so deeply into everything that Trump was alleged to have done and not look at all at what Hillary actually did do and was documented? And I don't know how we're going to explain that.
Yeah. There's one other element to it, of course, and that is that there's a pattern here. And the pattern here seems to be, as you've just enumerated very eloquently, the deflection of attention from what the Democrats have been doing to the Republican seems designed not only to smear and mess up the Republican, but to discourage, shall we say, any consideration of what the Democrats themselves have been doing. So it seems cynical, and I think it isn't probably going to pass muster with the American people if there is time to actually evaluate all this. And the challenge is, I think that the Democrats in this case, the president, have made it very clear they don't want there to be time.
Well,
they want to rush this thing through as rapidly as they can.
And, it's funny, Frank, earlier today I was talking to Bob Barr, not William Barr, but Bob Barr, the former congressman who was the manager for the impeachment process against Clinton. And I know there are going to be comparisons to Clinton, but Clinton had lied under oath to a grand jury and lied under oath to a federal judge. Those are federal felonies. What are they saying Donald Trump did? Well, he was asking, and I know how Adam Schiff has portrayed it. Adam Schiff, the congressman from California, has said, well, the president asked the president of Ukraine to dig dirt on Joe Biden. No, he didn't. He said, can you look into why this prosecutor was fired, as Joe Biden has been bragging about? And that will probably lead you to ask, well, why would Joe Biden have taken a particular interest in this prosecutor? Simply because he was looking at a company on whose board Hunter Biden sat, and Hunter Biden made extraordinary sums of money that I think the only interpretation of the money he made there, Frank, I actually looked up because I'd talked to some friends in financial services, said, what does a typical board of directors member make for a big company? I mean, like a brand name company in America. And my friend said about $100,000 a year if you're on the board. And I said, well, Hunter Biden was getting at least $600,000, some years more than $600,000, to sit on the board of directors of a Ukrainian natural gas company. Why would they be doing that? And I think the only logical answer is they thought they were buying influence with Hunter Biden's daddy. Weren't they? I mean, is there any other interpretation that seems reasonable to you?
No, I can't think of one. But again, thinking of patterns here. If this were the only incident in which that kind of corruption seemed at work, it would be one thing. But, of course, there is also the China instance where a similar thing happened. The guy got even more money out of the Chinese, over $1 billion, as I recall, then increased, I believe. That is, I think, another example of what is seriously wrong here. And no matter the amount of deflection or distraction, I think that the truth will out that we were dealing with a family in Joe Biden and his son that were behaving corruptly, and there were people around the world who knew it and took advantage of it.
Well, and when you look at what Bill and Hillary Clinton did with their foundation, with Bill's speech making and all that, it fits right in with that. Right. You say, well, if Joe Biden saw the example of Obama's predecessor and Clinton, said, well, how'd they make all that money? And let me tell you one other piece of translation I got from that friend in the financial business. He's in the business of investing other people's money, a few $1 billion of pension funds and things like that. And when I said the $1 billion that China sent to the investment fund for Hunter Biden, he said, well, there's $20 million right there. And I said, what do you mean? He said, the standard commission for anyone who works in a hedge fund, you bring in $1 billion, the commission to you right away is 2%. It's $20 million. I said, when we start talking about, Bill Clinton got $500,000 for a speech, that's outrageous enough. But if you think if one visit with Dad to China on Air Force Two brings $1 billion in, and the commission you earn on that is $20 million, then you start to understand how it was that, what did he call himself? Blue Collar Joe was able to buy his dream beach house for $3 million in retirement. You wonder, how did that happen? And, of course, the secondary question that since he believes in global warming, why did he buy a beach house and spend $3 million on a house that's going to be underwater in a few years, according to
him and Obama.
Him and Obama. Now, see, I actually understood when Al Gore got divorced from his wife, Tipper, and he bought her a beach house, and he said that the beach was going to be underwater. People sometimes do have tough divorces. Frank Gaffney from the Center for Security Policy. When we come back, is China heading down the road toward another Tiananmen Square? We'll talk about that, and I'll get to your phone calls and emails. 866-439-5277.